Well, I was born in Springville, Utah in 1942. I was born at home. It's still standing. I went to Grant Elementary School, 4 blocks up the street. Went by Boyer Grocery where we could stop and get candy, gum, whatever. Probably 3 Musketeers. It was an old school, 3 stories. And I had Mrs. Franson in kindergarten in the summer. And then Mrs. Robertson, 1st grade. And 2nd grade was Miss Murphy, who was a real good-looking teacher. 3rd grade was Mrs. Gardner. 4th grade was Mr. Christensen. 5th grade was Mr. Bean. And 6th grade I had Mrs. Gates and Mr. Robertson, or Mr. Erickson, who was the principal. When I was a 6th grader, they built a new school to the north of where the main Grant Elementary sat, and I never got to go to it. Back just after I finished junior high, they built a new junior high school. And then when I finished high school, they built a new high school. We were down there a couple of years ago for a basketball game for one of our granddaughters, playing Springville High, and they have a new high school. So, you know, times are changing. When I went to junior high and high school, they were both on the same campus, along with the Springville Art Museum. But now they've torn down the 2 junior high and the high school, and they've expanded the art museum. And so the junior high is on one campus up by the National Guard Armory, and the high school is over on 7th South. So
a lot of changes.
A lot of changes. Probably my favorite teacher was Mr. Christensen. Really? He was a good guy. In fact, when I went on a mission, he gave me a copy of LeGrand Richards' book, A Marvelous Work and a Wonder. Yep. Still have that book. Had it a long time. It's had a little use. We used it out in the mission field, but it was a good book. Junior high school, you want me to name a favorite teacher? I don't remember one that I would call a favorite teacher. I liked them all. In fact, 9th grade, I ended up playing in the high school band. They needed a baritone saxophone, and I played the baritone saxophone and marched either baritone or alto.
Really?
I played whatever saxophone they needed played. I probably could make a noise on it. I wouldn't say it was music.
So you marched during the summertime as well?
A little bit during the summer. It was usually spring and fall were the football games.
Okay.
And then band competitions. And then in the spring we'd be asked to play at the Spanish Fork Livestock Parade. Okay. And they always put Springville at the end of the parade after the livestock, because there was a little competition between Springville and Spanish Fork. They wanted to watch them march through the cowpucky. I took piano lessons all through most of grade school, all of junior high and high school. We were going to play a piano duet last night, but the program got canceled, thank goodness.
So you still play piano?
I can't. My wife is saying, not on your. I play at the piano.
Okay. But that's probably what got you started with your appreciation of music.
Yes. I think, in fact, it was 6th grade when I started playing, until I graduated from high school. Okay. And then I didn't play much anymore. It was good. Pep band was especially good.
That's fun.
In the gym.
Yeah.
And I played in the dance band in high school.
So you were big time.
Well, let's put it this way. through high school, I didn't go to many dances with girls because I went with my saxophone in the band, and the girls went with me sometimes.
Sure.
I never had trouble getting dates, and that was back in the days when the brethren had not said no dating till 16.
Really?
So I started dating when I was in 6th grade. We had some date dances that the 6th grade class had. Yeah, it didn't take too many dates to them, and lots of times the band was playing at the stake dance. I'd ask the leader if I could have this dance off to dance with the girl I'd brought.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
What is your favorite kind of music back when you were in high school?
Well, KEYY on Saturday nights played Sing 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 by Benny Goodman at the Carnegie Jazz concert that he had, and we would stay up to listen to that. But I like classical music.
Really?
You know, KWHO out of Salt Lake, which didn't send a very good signal down to Springville, but it was still classical music. Go forward, oh boy, 25 years, Spanish Fork High School choral came through the Northwest. We lived in Portland, and I was serving in the stake presidency, and the stake president said, "Would you speak to these people on Easter morning?" Sure, why not? The night before, they'd sung a concert. One girl in particular had both sung and played the piano, so she was quite visible. And so when I got up to speak there at church, I said, when I was growing up, there was no love lost between Springville and Spanish Fork. So I said, it's interesting that I would be here speaking to you today, even though you're from Spanish Fork. And when I finished speaking, the girl that had been so visible came up to me and said, "I'm really from Springville, but my folks moved to Spanish Fork last year, and so I want you to know that I'm really from Springville."
When did you graduate from high school?
Class of 60, and we just last summer had our 60th class reunion in the 62nd year because of COVID. A lot of the classmates are still alive. We've probably had more die in the last year than any period prior to that.
Really? Assuming then you shortly thereafter went on a mission?
Actually, I went to BYU for 2 years.
Okay.
And it was during that 2 years that I met Marilyn. And that's an interesting story. The kids have probably already heard it, but we'll tell them again. I had access to a car, and my cousin Joe from Payson didn't. So he'd come to Springville, and then we'd drive together to the functions at BYU. So we had driven together. It was AMS night, and George Romney was Man of the Year. So when the program ended, they said, if anybody has a car and would like to volunteer to drive some girls to the dance, would you volunteer? So my cousin Joe raised his hand and volunteered my car. We went up to Penrose Hall in Heritage Halls and picked up a carload of girls. One of the girls was Marilyn, and went to the dance, drove them to the dance, and then we went back to pick up another load, and there were no more loads to take. So I went back to the dance figuring I'd never see Marilyn again, because, there are a few students at BYU. Well, we met up fairly shortly after I got back to the dance, danced a bunch, and then I took her home along with some of the other girls. Then I asked her out for a date. the next Friday night, and she had mentioned, well, she was a member of the Alexis, which was a freshman honor society, and I was a sophomore at that time. So I got to the library one afternoon or early evening studying, and there was this girl that looked like Marilyn, had a Thealexis uniform on, sitting across the table from me. I spoke to her, just casual greeting, and went on studying, and thought, I wonder if that's who I've got a date with Friday night. Well, it just so happened it was one of her roommates. We have been friends ever since. And when we were dating, it was not unusual for me to end up taking some of her roommates on the date with us. We'd go over to the Rivoli Theater in Springville, see a movie, and they'd make sure to sit in a different part of the theater than we were in, which was always thoughtful of them. And we did a lot of things together that senior year. When I got my mission call to the Northwestern States, I wasn't terribly excited. I wanted to go to Scotland, where the Dougalls had come from. But, you sort of do what you got to do. Sure. So I went to the Northwestern States, and I received this photograph of Marilyn, and on it said, I'll love you forever. I'll be waiting when you get home. Wonderful. Well, I'd been out in the mission field a few months, and I got a new companion who was a green missionary. And I didn't recognize his name necessarily, but on Monday, which was diversion day, we could put out our girlfriend's pictures. I put out mine, and he put out his. Same picture, with the same inscription on it, no less. So anyway, being the humble person that I am, I said, Elder Kempton, you might as well put the picture away. I get home before you do. And when we got married, he was one of our groomsmen. And then when he finally got married, we went up to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho for his wedding reception.
Are you still friends?
Well, actually, we ran into each other at the distribution center 20 years ago, 25 years ago, something like that. I didn't recognize who he was. He came up to Marilyn and he said, do you know who I am? And she said, give me a hint. So he said, I am the first boy you kissed. But he said it really, really loud, so everybody at the distribution center was listening. And it was him. He died a couple of years ago. And he had a son that looked just like him. His youngest boy was a spitting image of him when he was missionary age. So it was fun. But he had changed some. He had a long white beard. And Marilyn says, and he was weird. He was different. But Howard was a good guy. And we had enjoyed him. That's all she wants me to say about Howard.
So you went to the Northwestern States?
Yes, Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. Not all of Oregon. Roseburg was the south end of the mission. Okay. Grants Pass, Ashland, and Klamath Falls were in the northern Cal mission. I never labored in Washington other than when I went there as a second counselor in the mission. And that was back in the days when missionaries, there weren't assistants to the president. There was a second counselor. And the missionaries lived at the mission home. So we lived up on the third floor of the mission home here in Portland. In Portland. It was the Barretts all the time I was there. Lived on the second floor. And then the main floor was where we ate meals and where we had our gospel study time. And we tended to walk home every day from the mission office for lunch, which was nice. And the Barretts had 3 daughters, so we used to do dishes with the daughters for some strange reason. And President Barrett didn't like to drive, so most of the driving with the mission car was done by me. And I like to drive, so it worked out well. We got stopped one time for speeding, and the policeman said, "Oh, President Barrett, how are you?" No ticket. Shortly after, I got called as second counselor, Elder Monson, toward our mission. And we met him over in Twin Falls, Idaho. When it came time to leave Twin Falls that night to fly to the Tri-City area, President and Sister Barrett sat together, so who was I to sit with but Elder Monson?
Wow.
And that was a real treat. And then from Tri-Cities to Portland the next day, which was Friday night, we flew to Portland. Sister Monson came into town Friday night, and the Monsons and the Barretts went down to Roseburg to see if it was ready to be made into a steak. And then Monday morning, we drove up to Tacoma, Washington for the next Bizone conference. Who was forced to drive but me? So we had a conference there, and one of the interesting things about that conference was we had a sister missionary. Don't remember what her name was, but she was not your typical sister missionary. We seated the missionaries by district, by where they ranked on baptisms. Elder Monson said, "President Dougall, the sister that's sitting there, is this where she sits, baptism-wise?" I said, "Oh yes, sir. She is the top baptizer for her district, and she was a top-notch missionary." That evening, as we're driving home, Elder Monson said, "President, your missionaries were dressed in colored shirts or striped shirts. They looked more collegiate than missionary." Said, "You probably should do something about that." So when we got to the mission home, I got on the phone, called the zone leaders for zones 3 and 4, and said, "Be sure your elders are dressed in white shirts tomorrow. You want to impress Elder Monson with that you look like missionaries." And we did. It was a great experience. I labored in Bend and South Seattle, out by the airport, and then Springfield, and then up in Zone 5, which was most of central Washington. Started out in Richland, and then moved up to Moses Lake, or Moses Hole as some of the natives called it. Then went from there to the mission home and labored the last 4 months there. And it was a real treat because I got to travel with President Barrett and watch him stick his thumb in his belt and talk about the prophet Joseph Smith. And so that was a real treat. When I finished my mission, my folks came and picked me up, and we drove up to the edge of Washington, to Nia Bay, to Indian Reservation there, and then drove across Washington and down to Highland Park, Max in Idaho, because this girl that had waited more or less for me was staying that weekend with her family at their cabin. We stopped in to see her, and I took her out for a little drive, and then I drove on home. And I think it was 4th of July weekend, because it was the 4th of July weekend some years later that my mother died. So it has significance. So I came home, she came down, we started dating again. And I bought her a ring, and then her brother said, "Oh, let me see the ring." I hadn't given it to her yet. I did that Friday night down in the West Fields of Springville. We ended up getting married and going on an extensive honeymoon to Las Vegas, which was about all we could afford at that stage of life. Went back to BYU. Marilyn graduated. In fact, she graduated before we got married, because she'd gone the 2 years I was on my mission. I started out majoring in physics. After the first semester, I changed my major because I said I was number 2 in class, but the gap between number 1 and number 2 was immense. So then I changed to pre-law. I didn't like writing that much, and that's what law is doing a lot of reading and writing. And my advisor said, "What do you know about accounting?" "Nothing." He said, "You need to know something about accounting." So I took an accounting class, and I said, "This is my love. This is where I want to be." I switched my major to accounting, and never looked back. Well, I take it, while we were living in Los Angeles, they announced a program for a junior accountant with the State Board of Equalization as a sales tax auditor. So I came home and said, "Marilyn, how would you like to have a honeymoon in Los Angeles?" She said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Well, I got a chance to get a job down there for 3 months, and that would be fun." I filled out the application and got accepted. She had an uncle that lived in South LA, just didn't tell us where in South LA he lived. And there was one of the people in his ward that wanted to go somewhere for the summer and needed somebody to take care of her house and her cat. So she said, "Well, if you'll take care of my house and my cat, you can live in it free." Sure. Well, have you ever heard of Watts? It was right on the edge of Watts. So we were one of the few white couples in the neighborhood. And in fact, when the Watts riots broke out, when they got on the other side of the Harbor Freeway, we decided we needed to get out of Dodge, because a car with Utah license plates would more than likely be whitey. So we took the 2 most valuable possessions we owned, her sewing machine and my stereo, and we went over to a roommate of her parents that lived in Westwood, which was a nicer area of Los Angeles than Watts, and spent the weekend with them. That was an interesting experience, to see a military jeep with a mounted machine gun and a policeman riding shotgun on it. Or at one other place, there were burned out buildings, and amongst them there was one building that wasn't burned, and on the glass windows it said "Blood Brother." So they burned the buildings around it but didn't burn it. So we got back to that lady's house and called her and said, Come the 1st of September, we're moving to a different port, because by then her folks had gone on a mission and my mother had passed away. And so it was like, what have we got to go back to Provo for? So we just, and she was going to have a free baby because she was working for Kaiser Hospitals. So we moved to Hollywood, which is where the office that I worked for was located and where the hospital she worked for was located. We were walking distance to both, and finished our year doing that, went to the beach often, then went back home. In the middle of that summer, we'd obviously gone to Utah for my mother's funeral. We got the call that she'd passed away on the evening of the 4th of July. If we'd have been smart, we'd have driven home that night. But being dumb, I tried to sleep that night, and then we drove through the desert in the middle of the day. And that was before air conditioners. The air conditioning was 460. Roll down 4 windows and drive 60 miles an hour. In the Nevada desert, it was hot. I mean, even the air blowing on you was hot. When we got to St. George, the first thing we did was pulled into a restaurant, got some ice water and some soft drinks just to get something cool. So when we went back after the funeral, my brother-in-law, who was going to Bishop, California, to the military base there, we went at night when it was a little cooler.
Yeah.
And so we did that. Our first child was born in Los Angeles. He was free because she worked for Kaiser. Then we came up to Utah, finished my degree, got a job with a national CPA firm in Portland, Oregon. I had determined I didn't want to live in Utah. I had interviews scheduled but never went to them in Los Angeles because we'd had a discussion, and I'd said to Marilyn, if we go to Portland about once every 3 or 4 months, I'm going to be gone for a week. If we live in Los Angeles, I'll never be gone overnight, but I'll leave early in the morning and get home late at night because of the commute. And so we decided Portland or Seattle was the best place to go. And I got a job offer in Portland comparable to Seattle. So I said, I'm going to live in Portland. We had opportunities for our handicapped daughter in Portland that didn't exist other places. We had friends from BYU who had a handicapped child about the same time as our daughter Allison. And they didn't get any services until the government mandated them. We got more services than the government mandated because the Beaverton School District cut back when the government mandated, here's what you got to do. Beaverton School District did more than they were supposed to, so they cut back. She was well taken care of by the Beaverton School District and is now well taken care of in a group home setting in Beaverton.
What's her name?
Allison. In fact, this roommate of Marilyn's that had sat across the table from me, her name was Allison. So it was her that our Allison was named after. We then had 10 more children. The rest were in Portland and cost money. 1 set of twins, 5 boys and 6 girls. We read the book Cheaper by the Dozen a couple of times to the kids as they were growing up, many times for breakfast. Well, most mornings for breakfast, we'd read part of a book. And that was one of the ones we read. So when we had 11, we figured, hey, Cheaper by the Dozen. Never did get the 12th one. Today, they get along unbelievably well. growing up, they had their challenges. But they're so good to us now, it's unreal. Our daughter, who lives in Folsom, California, who's a nurse, and her husband's a surgeon, they're always in touch with the doctor to find out how things are going with Dad. And they all seem to be concerned for our well-being.
How long did you live in Portland?
About 50 years. Well, I started out working for a national company called Pete Marwick Mitchell, which are now KPMG. I worked there for about 5 years, and then I worked in industry for 5 years. The company I'd worked for in industry was closing down the Portland operation. And so, I had the opportunity to go to work in San Francisco, which is where their headquarters was. San Francisco was a wonderful place to visit, but I didn't want to live there. So I concluded my choice was to start out on my own and just start up my own firm. And it worked. In fact, my son now runs it. The career changes were all basically in accounting. I concluded you're going to have to either work for yourself or you're going to have to be prepared to travel to new cities for new jobs. And having been somebody who had been raised in Springville at one address till I went on my mission, I kind of liked living at one address. And so we just stayed in Portland.
And then you came to Alpine?
Yes. We came to Utah a few years back and lived in South Jordan for about 3 years. And then went back to Oregon for a year and said, Oregon isn't what it used to be. And so we came back here. Part of it was, if I should die before Marilyn, this would be a good environment for her. And River Meadows really is a great place.
Anything you'd like to say to your children directly?
Keep the faith, kids. We're proud. You've done well. They're all self-supporting. Third son runs the accounting practice now. One of our children lives in England, is in banking. Our oldest son, though he graduated with a degree in electrical engineering and an MBA, went on to become the Utah State Auditor. Our second son is a financial advisor. Our fourth son, again, is the one over in England. That's the Jeff runs the accounting practice. Robert's in England, works in money management with the banks. And our fifth son, was in a horrible accident 10, 12 years ago. Almost killed him. But he's on disability. Oldest daughter is handicapped. Second daughter just got a master's degree in public health. Third daughter takes care of the books for her husband's business. He has his own firm or business. 4 and 5 of the girls are twins. One is in accounting with Ken Garf Company. When we bought our car at Ken Garf in South Jordan, we hadn't talked to her beforehand. We just went there because we wanted a Hyundai. We'd said something about our daughter working for Ken Garf, and he'd sort of blown it off. Well, while we were doing something, he looked her up and said, "Oh wow, she's one of their accountants." "Yep, she is." And then the other twin is the one that's the nurse practitioner down in Folsom, California. The youngest is an occupational therapist, lives back in Virginia. Her husband works for the government, but we can't know what he does. They just moved to another town. They're all self-supporting, except Allison, who lives on the government dole, and David, who lives on the government dole with disability, and the parents that live on the government dole with social security. They're all active in the church. All of the boys went on missions, and 4 of the girls went on missions, and the 5th one did 2 years of EFY as a counselor.
Yes.
I do love them. Okay.
Hi kids, we wish you a Merry Christmas. We hope you enjoy the things that we had to say about the family. We hope that it brought back good memories to you. What do you have to say, Dad?
We had some great times together. The camping trips and everything else we did.
We have the best family. We recognize each of you individually and how successful you've all been and how wonderful you've been in the way that you've treated us and respected us. We are ever so grateful for each one of you and your family members. We're proud of every one of our grandchildren and how successful they've been. And we just want to say thank you, that we love you and appreciate so much what you've done for us.
Merry Christmas.
And Happy New Year.